Hello. Okay. Let me know, guys, if you can see my screen. A thumbs up will do. All right, thanks, Rochelle. And then I'll be playing a recording. I'll kind of advise if it can be heard. What is web application security? Web application security refers to the practices and technologies used to protect websites and online services. All right, thanks, Rochelle. Okay, at the moment we have 81 participants. Let's give it another 5 minutes, then we'll start. Okay. We have more than 100 participants already, so I guess we should just start.
Recording in progress.
Right. Continuation of the cybersecurity part of this lecture series. For this session, this would be a first of a two-part web application.
Ay, natulog na.
Uh,
Bigyan natin.
yeah. This would be the first part of two for this lecture. This one will be focusing on web app security or web application security. Those applications available online, may it be your e-commerce, a social media platform, as long as it's being accessed online, we would consider those as web applications. Internet of Things is a subset of that one. Now for this lecture, divided it into 4 parts. An intro to web app security, and then we'll be going through the core security services for web application, where you'll see some parallelisms on network security as well. Threats to web applications. Some of it may have been discussed already in the previous session, but do note that your web applications are running on top of your network applications. See the OSI model, and then I'll be introducing you later to HOAS. And after that one, I'll be showing two videos. Demos. First one would be about SQL injections, and then the second one would be DDoS attack. These are just videos that I found online which are relevant up to this date. And then yeah, it just shows you how those attacks happen. Okay, at any given point, yeah, same as always. If at any given point you have any questions or clarifications, don't hesitate to post them in the chat.
At kitang-kita ko kung paano sila.
Okay, and I would request, if you're not going to ask any question, please mute your mic. Yeah. Okay. Let's start.
Services from unauthorized access. What is web application security? Web application security refers to the practices and technologies used to protect websites and online services from unauthorized access, malicious attacks, or data breaches. It involves safeguarding both the application's front-end and back-end components, as well as the data they handle. It ensures the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data and services. Now, why is web application security important? Web applications are a part of our everyday lives and underpin many essential services, from shopping to banking and healthcare. But with their importance comes significant risks if they are insecure. First, let's talk about the widespread usage of web applications. Web applications have become indispensable tools for both business and individuals. Think about e-commerce platforms like Amazon, Shopee, and Lazada. These sites depend on secure web applications to manage user accounts, process payments, and handle sensitive transaction data. Imagine what would happen if one of these systems were hacked. Millions of people could be affected. The same goes for financial services. Apps like PayPal or Gcash store sensitive financial and applications. Patients use them to book appointments, access medical records, and communicate with doctors. A breach here could not only harm individuals but also disrupt the healthcare are accessible from anywhere, anytime. This global access code can manipulate bridges between systems, can also become entry points for attackers. The consequences of a single breach can be far-fetched. First, there's the financial cost. Fixing vulnerabilities, addressing the damage, and compensating customers can be extremely expensive. Long term, the company may also lose revenue, lose trust. Of these GDP. Let's dive into the these are the foundation and implement data details and this includes data that is both stored in the application and sent across networks. Finally, let's talk about availability. This goal focuses on keeping the web application and its services up and running at all times, even during cyber attacks or system failures. If a web
Course, the first measure we'll discuss is data protection. This is about safeguarding sensitive information such as user credentials, financial data, and personal details from unauthorized access and breaches. Web applications deal with a lot of sensitive data, and if that data is compromised, it could result in serious consequences for both users and organizations. To protect data, we implement various security techniques like encryption and secure storage. For example, passwords should never be stored in plain text. Instead, they should be hashed using algorithms like bcrypt or Argon2 to make it nearly impossible for attackers to retrieve the original password. Similarly, sensitive data like credit card details should be encrypted both at rest and in transit. The next measure is access control.
This refers to ensuring that only authorized users can access specific parts of the application or perform specific actions. For instance, an application may have sensitive administrative areas that should only be accessible by certain users, while other users should only have access to their personal profiles or basic features. One common practice in access control is role-based access control, or RBAC, where users are assigned roles that dictate what they can and cannot do. For example, a user with an admin role might have access to all parts of the system, while a guest user has limited permissions. Implementing least privilege access, where users only have the minimum permissions necessary to do their job, is a key principle in securing web applications and reducing potential attack vectors. Finally, secure communication is essential for protecting data as it's transmitted over the internet. Whenever data is sent between a user's device and the server, it is vulnerable to interception by malicious actors. This is especially true when using unsecured networks like public Wi-Fi. To protect this data, we use encryption protocols like HTTPS. HTTPS ensures that the data transmitted between the user's browser and the server is encrypted, making it much harder for attackers to intercept and read it. This is critical for any web application handling sensitive information like login credentials or payment details. It's important that the website has a valid SSL or TLS certificate, which guarantees that the connection is secure and authentic.
Note that these security services are not just limited to web applications. For me, I would consider this as a guide or a must whenever I'm developing any type of application, especially when it deals with data being transferred from one location to another. When I say from one location to another, a sample of which would be if, let's say, for example, I have a mobile application and then that mobile application is talking to the internet or talking to the application servers, then the data is being transmitted from my device going to the server, and then at any point between that communication to the server, my data is actually at risk unless I secure it. Okay. Are there any questions or clarifications? Okay, if there's none, we'll be moving on to the threats.
In this segment, we will explore some of the most common threats to web applications. These vulnerabilities are exploited by cybercriminals to gain unauthorized access, manipulate data, or disrupt services. Understanding these threats is critical in building secure web applications and protecting both user data and system integrity. Let's start with SQL injection, or SQLI. This type of attack occurs when attackers inject malicious SQL queries into input fields, such as search bars or login forms. These queries are then executed by the backend database, allowing attackers to manipulate or steal sensitive information stored in the database. For example, if an attacker enters a specially crafted SQL statement into a user logged-in form, they might be able to bypass authentication and gain access to that application. The consequences of SQL injection can be severe, including data theft, unauthorized data modification, or even data deletion. One famous case is the 2009 Heartland Payment Systems breach, which exposed over 130 million credit card details due to an SQLI vulnerability. To mitigate SQL injection, always use parameterized queries and prepared statements. These methods ensure that user input is treated as data rather than executable code, making it harder for attackers to inject malicious SQL. Next, we have cross-site scripting, or XSS. In an XSS attack, attackers inject malicious scripts into web pages that are viewed by other users. These scripts can be executed in the victim's browser, leading to various attacks such as stealing cookies, session hijacking, or even redirecting users to malicious websites. For example, an attacker might input a malicious script in a comment section of a forum or contact form, which then executes when another user views it. The attacker could steal the victim's session cookie and hijack their account. To protect against XSS, developers should sanitize and escape all user inputs, ensuring that malicious scripts cannot be executed in the browser. Implementing Content Security Policy, or CSP, can also help restrict the sources from which scripts can be loaded. Cross-site request forgery, or CSRF, is a type of attack where an attacker tricks a user into executing unwanted actions on a web application where they are already authenticated. These can happen when a user visits a malicious website while logged into their bank or social media account. For example, the attacker could create a link or form that causes the victim's browser to make a request to the target site, performing actions like transferring funds or changing account settings without the user's consent. Since the request comes from a trusted user, the application may incorrectly assume it's legitimate. To defend against CSRF, developers can use anti-CSRF tokens, or unique tokens attached to each request that validate whether the request came from a trusted source. Additionally, always verify the referrer and origin headers when processing sensitive actions. Insecure deserialization occurs when an application deserializes untrusted data, allowing attackers to execute arbitrary code or tamper with data on the server. Deserialization is a process of converting data structures or objects into a format that can be stored or transmitted. If not handled correctly, attackers can manipulate these data to execute malicious actions on the server. For instance, an attacker might craft a malicious object that, when deserialized, executes code on the server, potentially leading to remote code execution or the manipulation of sensitive data. This type of vulnerability is particularly dangerous because it can be exploited to gain control over the server. To mitigate insecure deserialization, always validate and sanitize any data before deserializing it, and implement strict input validation for all user-supplied data. Finally, we have broken authentication. Broken authentication and service and session management. This vulnerability arises when web applications fail to securely manage user sessions or authentication credentials. For example, if passwords are stored in an unencrypted form, or if session IDs are predictable or not expired after logout, attackers can easily hijack sessions or take over user accounts. Consequences of broken authentication include unauthorized access to sensitive areas, account takeovers, and data breaches. For example, attackers can hijack a session using stolen or leaked session tokens and impersonate the legitimate user. To protect against these attacks, always store passwords securely using bcrypt or Argon2 for hashing. Implement multi-factor authentication to add additional layer of security and ensure that session tokens are secure, random, and expire after a reasonable period.
But these are just some of the threats. These are the common ones, and later when we go into OWASP, OWASP does publish their top 10 vulnerabilities every 3 or 4 years. We'll go through some of them. Before we proceed to OWASP, are there any questions or clarifications? There's none. Let's proceed.
Now, we'll be discussing OWASP, an important organization in the field of web security. OWASP is a non-profit foundation that focuses on improving the security of software through open source projects, community-driven resources, and knowledge sharing. Their mission is to provide unbiased practical information on web application security to help developers and security professionals build more secure software. OWASP stands for the Open Web Application Security Project, and it is an organization that works towards making web applications and software more secure. It is made up of a global community of security professionals, developers, and researchers who collaborate on projects, share best practices, and provide educational resources to improve web application security. OWASP is widely known for its open source tools and best practices that help developers address the growing cybersecurity threats targeting web applications. One of their most influential contributions to the security community is the OWASP Top 10, a list of 10 most critical web application security risks. OWASP's mission goes beyond just publishing the top 10 list. The organization contributes to improving web application security in the following ways. First, on its open source tools. OWASP provides numerous tools including OWASP ZAP or Z-Attack Proxy and the OWASP Dependency Check that helps developers and security professionals assess the security of their web applications. Next, OWASP also gives educational resources. They publish detailed guides, cheat sheets, and documentation on best practices for securing web applications. These resources are free and open to the public. Third, it has a global community. OWASP encourages collaboration among professionals in the security and software development fields. They host local chapters, conferences, and events where security experts share knowledge and insights. Fourth is on security standards. OWASP has also developed security standards and frameworks such as OWASP SAM, or Software Assurance Maturity Model, which helps organizations evaluate and improve their security practices. Now, how can OWASP help you? Whether you are a developer, security professional, or business owner, OWASP provides a wealth of resources that can help you strengthen your web application security. By adopting OWASP guidelines and tools, you can 1. Identify and fix vulnerabilities early in the development process. 2nd, learn about the most common threats and how to mitigate them. 3rd, build secure software from the ground up, reducing the risk of breaches. And 4th, comply with industry standards and regulations by following best practices. OWASP offers a variety of resources such as the OWASP Cheat Sheet series, where these are guides that provide practical recommendations on various security topics, from authentication to securing APIs. There's also the Security Testing Guide. It's a comprehensive guide on testing web applications for security vulnerabilities. Then lastly, there is also the Web Security Testing Framework, where
Here are some of
conducts
the
thorough security assessment of
vulnerabilities
web
that has been published by
applications.
OWASP over the course of a number of years. Do note that for some we've gone through already. Let's say injection attacks. Later I'll be showing you a video about SQL. Okay, broken authentication that has already been discussed in the previous deck. Okay, sensitive data exposure. Sensitive data exposure, this vulnerability arises when web application fail to properly secure sensitive data, such as personal information, credit card details, or authentication tokens. Some of the causes for this one would be lack of encryption, whether data is at rest or in transit, weak or outdated encryption algorithms. Do note that if you are using old encryption algorithms, chances are some attackers might already have mechanisms on how to exploit it or reverse it if you've used that for encryption. And yeah, the last one is storing sensitive data in plain text. Do note that some use cases would require for you to store information in hashed form. Let's say your password. So let's say you're going to develop a web authentication platform, an authentication platform. Never ever store the passwords in clear text in the database. Always encrypt it and then store the encrypted or the hash string as password. That would be safer rather than just storing it in clear text. If someone gets a hold of your database, then yeah, your passwords are readily available for them to mine. Okay, so that's sensitive data exposure. The other one is XML, external entities, or XXE. So XXE attacks exploit vulnerabilities in XML parsers by allowing attackers to inject external entities that may reference sensitive files on the server. So how do you mitigate this one? Disable XML external entity processing. That would be the first. You can use safer XML parsers. There are a number of XML parsers out there. If you're going to use any open source XML parser, just make sure that it's being supported by a large community, or at least it has a number of forks, a number of stars in GitHub. And then last is validating and sanitizing the XML inputs. A rule of thumb that I always follow ever since I've started my career is never to trust user input, regardless on who they may be. Okay, can access. Then we have security misconfiguration. Security misconfiguration happens when an application is left in an insecure state due to improper configurations. This could involve default passwords, unnecessary services, or incomplete patching. When we say default passwords, usually whenever you install third parties or any of the services, the most common default password would be admin as the username and password as the password, or 1234567. So yep. Mitigation for this one, how you'd be able to avoid it. One, to regularly review and update your configuration settings. Second would be removing unnecessary services or features, and ensuring proper access control and password management. Okay, what else do we have here? Okay, yeah. Then we have using components with known vulnerabilities. Yes. With the advent of open source, this vulnerability involves using outdated or unpatched software libraries and frameworks, mostly in open source projects. Those are the ones that contain known security flaws. So attackers can exploit these flaws to compromise the application. Now, mitigation for this, or how you'd be able to avoid it. One is to regularly update and patch your components. You need to monitor for any known vulnerabilities in any of your used libraries. Do note that in your projects, let's say you're using Python and then you're importing a library or you're importing a module, you're not the author. Chances are that library or that library or module might have dependencies that are vulnerable. So it will always be a good thing to do checks for that. And last, use automated tools for dependency management. In our company, we're using Dependable. What it does is it just continuously checks whether the libraries that we use are outdated or not, or if it is susceptible to any exploits or vulnerabilities. Okay, and last one is insufficient logging and monitoring. This means that the web applications fail to properly track and log critical security events, making it harder to detect and respond to attacks. So consequences for this one, delayed detection of attacks. You don't know that your site is already attacked or your site is already down. That's one. Second is difficulty in post-incident analysis. If you are doing RCAs, your root cause analysis, if you don't have enough logs to view or to review, to investigate with, then definitely it would be very challenging to be able to determine what was the source. And undetected data breaches, which is very critical because you don't know that you're already being attacked, or you don't know whether any of your information is already leaked. Okay. The next section I'll be showing you two demos, not by me, by the way, not by me, just some dudes over at YouTube. Unless you have questions or clarifications. Okay. First one would be around SQL injection attack.
Welcome to this short video where I'm going to do a little demonstration of a technique called SQL injection, which is a network security attack often used to try and gain unauthorized access to websites. So I'm going to demonstrate this to you. I've got a very, very, very simple website here with a simple login form. And this website is powered by a little database, which we can see here in PyCharm. So this is the code that runs the actual web page. And I've got a user table, and if I look in my table, I have 3 users, one called admin, one called test user, one called Joe Blogs, and each one has a password. So if I were to take test user and testing, I should be able to log in. So let's try that. So I've put in the username test user and I put the password testing. So if I press login, that logs me into my very, very basic website and it welcomes me. If I log out and I try another username password for a user that doesn't exist, and I try logging in, this should fail because there is no Mike Smith user. And indeed that's failed, told me that that's incorrect. So far so good, and it looks like you couldn't hack, even if you knew that there was a user such as admin, but if you didn't know the password, and I try and log in, again it won't let me in. So let's try the SQL attach. I'm going to enter quote to close off the initial username equals quote, and then I'm going to put or 1 equals 1 hyphen hyphen. I can leave the password blank, and I'll press login, and it's logged me in. And notice it's actually logged me in as admin, and yeah, I didn't provide that as the user, and the reason it's done that is that admin is the first result in my table of users. So it will by default log you in as the first user.
Okay, that's a demonstration of an SQL injection attack. And yeah, as mentioned earlier, mitigation of that one would be one, use query parameters. Whenever you use query parameters for any of your database queries. Note that for any input by your user, that's supposed to be sanitized. Query params store procs for some. Okay, and then questions or clarifications relating to this? Otherwise, I'll be showing the next video, which is on DOS attack. None. Okay.
Welcome to this short video where I
Okay, this one is on DOS attack. What the quote unquote attacker will be doing here is try and overload the server of a website, the website called Game of Hacks, with a number of requests using a tool called Pentmin. Pentmin is an open source tool, and then please don't use this to any of the websites. This is just a demonstration. Okay. So what the attacker did here is just show the URL, the website Game of Hacks. And on this one, he is using ping. Ping is a bash command. Ping is a bash command that sends packets, bite-size packets request going to the website, and then if the website, if it gets a response, it just displays the time that it was able to retrieve that response. So in this scenario, 64 bytes has been sent. 64 bytes has been received, and then the time was 87.9 milliseconds. So that's the one that it received, meaning it's successful. The website is running. There you go. And then 0% packet loss means all the requests were successful. Now what the attacker will do is use Pentmino tool and bombard Game of Hacks website with a number of requests that would be doing a DOS attack already. The one that the attack that is using is called Slow Loris. Now, once he activates this tool, there you go. At this point, the attack is ongoing already, and then the attack will only stop if the tool is no longer getting any response from the server. There you go. At this point, the resource temporarily unavailable, meaning the site is already down. For the attacker to determine whether it's actually down or not, the attacker will be using the ping tool again in Bash. Okay, there we go. Initially, when ping was used, packets were being received from the server, and now on the second attempt for ping, the resource is unavailable already. So yeah, that's pretty much a DOS what happens on a DOS attack. Okay. Questions or clarifications? Because otherwise, that would be what I have for this session. None. All right. All yours, Rochelle.
Thank you, Sir Mark. Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending the week 7 lecture session. I just want to remind, don't forget to log your attendance until 2 o'clock p.m. And the quiz for Module 7 will be available in the TrueLine website at exactly 3:45 p.m. today after the last group lecture session. Please do answer your quiz before the deadline on Tuesday, November 19 at 11:59 p.m. Additionally po, I just want to remind also to answer the quiz for Module 6. The deadline on this will be tomorrow. No more extensions po. Thank you and see you next week. Thank you, Sir Mark.
All right. Thanks. See you then.
Recording stopped.